Welcome, everyone. I'm so grateful you're here. Before we begin, I just want to go over my intention for this hour. This is a monthly gathering that I offer, and I do it with the intention of bringing a community of midlife women together who are spiritual seekers, who are looking to dive deeper into these conversations and concepts with like-minded women going through this same stage of life together. So I want this space to feel really comfortable, really safe, and very informal. So if anyone wants to jump in at any point, you can just take yourself off of mute, or you can raise your hand through Zoom if that feels more comfortable. But please, you don't have to wait till the end. I want to make sure that the things that we're talking about are really clear. And if I can clear up any question you might have in the moment that helps you to understand the concept better, I am so happy to do that. So this is a safe and loving space, and I want you to feel confident to ask the questions, to share the reflections, to share anything that is coming up for you that you just want to share or you feel like somebody else can benefit from. Because what I have found through participating in groups and leading groups is that the magic of a group is not just what you come to realize on your own through your own reflection, but it is what you come to understand when someone else shares what they have learned through their own reflection. So that is the magic of a group setting, and I hope it's what we can create here. So what is a satsang? So let's briefly get into that in case you haven't attended one of these before. Satsang is a Sanskrit word that means being in the company of truth. And so what we do in a satsang is that we dive into a concept, a spiritual concept from these ancient teachings of yoga. It can be take a singular concept like we're doing today, or it could be an ancient book like the Bhagavad Gita. But whatever it is, we take something from this ancient wisdom and we dive into it. We explore it. We try to understand it on a deeper level. And then we try to apply it to our own lives. We see how it's showing up in our own lives. So we take this ancient wisdom and the truth that lies within it. That's part of the truth that we're gathering in the company of. And then we find our own truth, right? How does this apply to our own truth? So it's our personal truth along with the more global truth. And how can we support one another in remembering who we truly are beneath the noise of everyday life? So that is what a satsang is. And it's what we're doing here today. And each month we'll gather around this a particular theme. Like this month, it's Rāga, but we'll talk about what the philosophy is, and then we'll dive into usually some journaling, some way of internally reflecting on how it is impacting you personally, some meditation to see if we can get, the subconscious to rise up to the conscious, and then a period of sharing for anyone who feels comfortable sharing and being in conversation about how this particular concept is working in their life and maybe what came up for them today, what they've realized. And then lastly, I'll always send you away with a little tool because after we leave, sometimes it's hard to implement it in our lives, to carry it forward in our lives. And I really want this to not be something that you just attend once a month and then it's isolated to this 1 hour and you're not sure how to make it applicable in your everyday life. So each month I'll send you home with a little tool that you can use throughout the month, because this is the theme for the month. And you can apply it and see how Rāga may be showing up throughout your days, throughout the next month. And the more you begin to notice it, and that's I think one of the beautiful gifts of yoga and yoga philosophy is that most of it's just about beginning with awareness. And once you start becoming aware throughout your life, you can start seeing more and more and more ways that this is impacting your life, and you can start to see how you want to maybe change thoughts, beliefs, or actions in a way that is going to allow you to be more free, because that is what yoga philosophy and practices is all about. It is about liberation, the liberation of the soul, freedom. And each of its teachings really guides us towards that. How can we be more free in our lives? How can we feel less caged, less controlled by conditioning, and more free to be what we truly are, which is awareness, consciousness, having a human experience. Okay, so before we begin, let's all just arrive by sharing a grounding practice that just is going to bring us to the present moment. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, so I know many of you are probably just finishing work, or maybe you're listening to this at work and feeling a little bit scattered from your day. So let's just take a moment to settle into the present moment and settle into the body. So I invite you to just take a comfortable seat wherever you can. If it's available to you to lie down, that is also a beautiful option. And then just gently closing the eyes. And if you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes on camera, feel free to turn your camera off for this piece. I want you to be as relaxed as possible. So if turning your camera off allows your nervous system to settle more deeply, then I invite you to please do that. So wherever you are, seated or lying down, either gently closing the eyes or just taking a hazy gaze on the floor beneath you. And let's just take a moment to come to our breath, just to notice the breath. Maybe noticing where you're feeling your breath. For some people, they'll feel it in the chest. For others, the belly. For some, maybe it's the sensation of cool air in the nostrils as you inhale, and warm air flowing out of the nostrils as you exhale. Maybe getting curious about what that breath feels like today. Is it shallow or is it deep? Is it slow or a little more rapid? Is it smooth? Or do you feel it catching in places? Are there gentle pauses at the top of the inhale or the bottom of the exhale? Or does one breath simply flow into the next? There are no right or wrong answers, no good or bad, simply noticing. And now bringing your awareness to your sense of sound, allowing it to rest on whatever sound calls your attention first. Maybe it's people talking in the background. Maybe it's the humming of a computer. Maybe it's cars driving by outside. Just let your awareness rest on whatever sound comes in, and you can move from sound to sound, picking up both gross and subtle sounds in your environment. Resting there as long as it feels good or until the next sound pulls you away. And lastly, let's drop into your body, feeling for sensation. Maybe it's the feeling of your feet on the floor, or your back against a backrest of a chair. Or maybe it's internal sensation, the beating of your heart, the buzzing or tingling of prana, life force energy in your hands. Maybe you're feeling tension or tightness or pain in an area of the body. Just moving your awareness around, letting it rest with that sensation until another one calls you away. And now gently bringing your awareness back to the breath, wherever you felt it with the most intensity. Focus your awareness there. And again, with curiosity, just noticing if it's changed at all. Again, there is no right or wrong, no good or bad, just a noticing. And then when you feel ready, you can gently blink your eyes open if you had them closed, or just return your gaze back up, taking a few moments here in stillness to let the practice settle in. And then when you feel ready, maybe bringing gentle movements to the body, anywhere that feels tight or feels like it needs a little wiggle, please do so. And if you turned your camera off, you can turn it back on. And we're going to start talking about Raga. So that is this month's theme. So a little background, if you haven't attended one of the previous satsangs, Raga is one of the five kleshas. And in yoga philosophy, the kleshas are the five roots of suffering. So all forms of suffering in life fall into one of these five buckets, which is very hard to understand at first. That seems impossible, right? Because there are so many forms of suffering. But when you really start to understand these kleshas, you understand that all of your suffering really does fall into one or more of these five containers. And it's why I felt it was so important to begin this satsang journey by going through the kleshas, because again, yoga philosophy is about freedom and liberation and the end of suffering. And so we need to understand how we're actually choosing and causing suffering in our own lives so that we can liberate ourselves from it. And these five are independent. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit record on the first one, so I do not have a recording of the first one. I have last month's up on my Substack page, so feel free to go back and rewatch them or rewatch that one. They are really independent of each other, except for that first one really impacts all of them. So very briefly, I'm going to go through the first one. So the first klesha is avidya. And avidya translates into ignorance or spiritual delusion. And it's the concept, and it is the root. So all the other four spring forth from this first one, avidya. And it represents this fundamental misunderstanding of reality. And it is a mistaking the temporary for eternal. And what that means is we rest our identity on things that are temporary, like our bodies, our roles, our beliefs, our accomplishments, right? All of these things that we tend to place after the words I am, right? I am a mom. I am a spiritual teacher. I am a wife, right? I have advanced yoga training certificates. I have a nursing degree, right? These are some of my roles and some of my accomplishments. And when we rest our identity on those things and believe they are who we are, then when they start to change, as they inevitably do, something I think that becomes very obvious in midlife. This is a season of life where we start to really understand that these things that we based our identity on are rapidly changing, and it feels very confusing and scary and can be disillusioning. We start to understand that that's how can we be those things if those things are changing? Then who's the steady eye beneath all of these changing things? And that is what avidya is. It's this misidentification with the self, the capital S self, with things that are not eternal, with things that are constantly changing, instead of understanding that we are the eternal. We are the soul, we are consciousness, awareness that rests underneath everything else that is changing. So, and just give you that background since it is the root of the other four. So let's get back to raga. So raga is a Sanskrit word, and it is typically translated into attachment, craving, or clinging. But it's basically our tendency to seek out people, objects, and experiences that bring us pleasure and avoid things that bring us pain, which seems fairly obvious, right? That this is what we would do. We've been doing this since we were infants, right? When you were a baby and you cried because you were hungry or your diaper needed to be changed, right? And then your caregiver came and fed you or changed your diaper. And that brought pleasure, right? You weren't wet anymore. Your body was much more comfortable. You were given warm milk, or maybe, held closely as you were given your warm milk. And that felt lovely, right? Because your belly was getting full. And also you had this nice, close connection that felt loving and safe. And so we from really birth come to understand there are certain things in my life that make me feel good, and there are certain things in my life that make me feel bad. And I want to optimize feeling good. I want to try to do everything I can to avoid feeling bad and to increase my experience of pleasure. And there is nothing wrong with that. Yoga does not say that pleasure is wrong. In fact, the yoga masters tell us that pleasure is actually the whole point of life. Pleasure and liberation is why we're here. The trouble comes in when we start believing that in order to be okay, we need to have the things that bring us pleasure. And if we can't get them, that we're not going to be okay. We're not going to be safe. We're not going to be happy. We're not going to be peaceful. We're not going to be free, right? Then in order to be any of those things, we have to hide from the things that are painful and spend a serious amount of time, attention, and energy seeking out the things that bring us pleasure. And when we do that, we kind of get ourselves into a very sticky situation, because I would guarantee that most of you have noticed by now in your life that you cannot control life. You can't control other people. You can't control situations and circumstances. You can't even control your own body half the time. And so when we attach our happiness and our okayness to things outside of us, we are on very unsteady ground, very shaky ground. And then that's how we get ourselves into trouble, because we start trying to force things to go the way that we want them to go so that we can have the pleasurable experiences that we want. And when we don't get them, because things are outside of our control, it very much impacts how we feel, right? How our emotional status, how happy we feel, how angry we or frustrated or disappointed or sad. And so we are left on this kind of emotional roller coaster based on what's happening outside of us that we cannot control. And our memories play a big role in raga because we remember, we really store in our memory banks the people, the objects, and the experiences that made us happy in the past. And we cling to them and we want to try to avoid losing them. And we want to try to recreate those experiences so we can have that same sense of pleasure again and again. So here's a small example of how raga can show up in your life. Maybe you're a coffee lover and you go out and you get your coffee every morning from a local barista, local coffee shop that has baristas. And maybe there's one barista that makes it, in your opinion, the best, right? Whenever this person makes your coffee or your espresso, it's just perfection to you. And so you go one day and that barista happens to be there. You have your coffee, it's amazing. And you cannot wait to go back the next day and have the same cup of coffee because it brought you so much pleasure. But you go the next day and that barista isn't there, somebody else makes it, and it just does not hit the spot in the same way. And now you're kind of, you're like disappointed. Now I paid all this money for this cup of coffee. It's not even that good. And now you're planning when to go to the coffee shop based on when that other barista is going to be there, right? So this would be a very small example of raga. You experienced something that was pleasurable. You stored that in your memory bank. You wanted to experience it again. You tried, but it didn't have the same hit, right? It didn't give you the same hit of pleasure. So now you're disappointed. And now you're expending a lot of your energy trying to figure out how to get back to that level of pleasure, how to get back to experiencing that same cup of coffee that gave you so much enjoyment. So that would be a small example of how raga can show up in your life in really the minuscule ways. And then the question becomes when you have the cup of coffee that's like meh, right? Not so good. It's really not hitting the spot. How is that making you feel? And is that impacting the quality of that moment for you? Maybe it doesn't impact the quality of your entire day, but does it impact the quality of that moment? And how does that moment carry forward to the next moment? Because every moment impacts the next moment. And so we start to see how even these tiny little ways that raga shows up can actually spread out into our life more than the moment itself. So you can think of raga as your personal agenda for happiness. And I want to do just a small little exercise here so that we can really apply this to our lives personally. Let's just take a moment. If you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you don't have to. But I want you to bring to mind a day recently that was a great day, in your opinion. It doesn't have to be anything special, like you were on a vacation or a retreat or anything special, just an average day that you could say, wow, that was a really good day. So just bring that day to mind and recall it with as much accuracy as you can. Where were you going? What were you doing? Who were you with? Okay. Now, let's think about a day on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm not talking about the worst day of your life or something really horrible happening, but a day that you were like, that was kind of a bummer day. I did not enjoy that day. I was looking forward to getting into my bed at the end of the day and having it be over. Again, an average day, but one that really just wasn't particularly pleasurable or enjoyable for you. And again, bring that to mind with as much detail as possible. What were you doing? Who was there? What happened? Okay, so now ask yourself, why was the good day a good day? And why would we label the bad day a bad day? And how much of that decision to choose to call one day a good day and another day a bad day was based on what you experienced that day and how much that experience or the experiences of that day aligned with your expectations and with what brought you pleasure or brings you pleasure. So, for example, a good day maybe is that you woke up, you had a great night's sleep the night before. You got ready for work, you stopped to get your cup of coffee, and it was your favorite barista, and you had the most wonderful, perfect, pleasurable cup of coffee. And then, for whatever reason, traffic was light that day. And so you cruised on into work with very little traffic, hitting every green light. And then you get to work, and it's not a particularly busy day that day, right? You have time to do the deep work. Or I used to be a nurse. I remember it was great when we had slower days. It was very pleasurable not to be running around like a maniac. So maybe it's just a slower day. Maybe you had fewer meetings and you could really check a lot of things off your to-do list. Maybe you got a compliment on your work. Maybe someone came to you and told you you did a great job on something, or they came to you and said, I want to trust you with this project because I think you'd be really good at it, right? There was something in your workday that felt good to you, that someone believed in you or saw how good you were at your job. And then maybe you came home. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the sun was shining out of the sky and the weather was 75 degrees, right? And then you came home and your kids or your partner had had the house cleaned up or made dinner or, was a great listener that evening, right? So these would be all things that maybe would happen in a day that you would look back on that day and say, wow, this is a really good day. I really enjoyed myself today, right? And they all were all things that brought you pleasure and all met your expectations of what a good day is, what a preferable day is. Now we can contrast that. Maybe one day you woke up and you slept terribly and you're just tired and you don't feel like going to work. And then you stop to get your cup of coffee and it's not the right barista and the coffee is no bueno. Then you hit a lot of traffic going to work. And then you get into work and it's super busy and you have meetings all day and you just feel like you're totally behind on the actual work you have to do. And then you drive home and the house is a mess and your partner or your kids are, not really being fully present with you and wanting to listen to how bad your day was that day. Okay. We can see the opposites there, right? I think we could all very much probably feel the difference between those 2 days and how those 2 days might make us feel, one being pleasurable and one being not pleasurable. And can you see that you attached your happiness or your peace to things outside of your control? And that's what Rāga is trying to show us, right? When we attach our peace or happiness to things outside of our control, we're in big trouble because we couldn't control, in that example of the good day and the bad day, all of those things were outside of our control. So if we hinge our happiness to that, then will forever be on a roller coaster of happiness and satisfaction versus unhappiness and dissatisfaction. So the question is, if that's how we're going to live, does that sound like freedom to you? Does that sound like a life where you are free? Because to me, it doesn't, right? To me, it sounds like a life where I am actually being controlled. I'm a puppet on a string that is being controlled by the world outside of me. And I don't want to live like that. And I don't think most people do. And yet we do, because we unconsciously move through life seeking this pleasure and avoiding pain, because we remember what the pleasure felt like and we want to feel it again. It's very logical, right? Our brains are very logical, right? It's logical that you would want to seek out the thing that you remember brought you pleasure and avoid the thing that brought you pain. But there's nothing wrong with that per se until we hinge our happiness, our okayness, our peace on that happening. And As I mentioned, it consumes a lot of our energies, a lot of our thought processes, a lot of our actions, a lot of our speech, trying to manipulate the world into what we want it to be. It places a lot of expectations on others, particularly those close to us, because we want them to behave and act in a way that is pleasurable to us. It strengthens our thought patterns, our samskaras. Our samskaras are these thought patterns that we repeat over and over, and they can be beneficial or unbeneficial to us. And negative samskaras are the ones that we would be reinforcing if we are continuously in this loop of trying to increase our pleasure and decrease our pain. And so when our energies are consumed, we're placing expectations on people, we're cementing these negative sanskaras into our minds. It makes us once again dependent on things outside of us for our happiness. And Raga makes us believe that if we could only return to the previous experience that made us happy, that it will make us happy again. And not only will it make us happy again, we kind of up the ante each time. Like each time for you go for that cup of coffee, you want it to be just a little bit better. It's almost like a drug, like a high. You want it to be a little bit better and a little bit better. And if it's not just a little bit better than the previous experience, then we are disappointed. I don't know if you've ever had the experience, I certainly have, where I've gone to a restaurant and had a meal and I can't get the meal off my mind, right? It was that good. It was so good. And then I go back to the restaurant and I order the same meal again, expecting to enjoy it at the same level. For whatever reason, maybe it's a different chef, maybe the chef is having an off day, maybe it's my own taste buds, I don't know. But it just can't compare. It's just not as good as what I have in my memory. But I keep trying, right? I keep trying one more forkful, trying to believing somehow that if I just try a little bit harder, I'll enjoy it as much as I did before. And we do this in so many areas of our lives. We do it in our relationships. Like maybe you had a friendship that was a really great friendship. And every time you got together with this person, you had so much fun and you made each other laugh and you felt seen and heard. And it was just a great relationship. And then for whatever reason, over time, the relationship changes as you both change. And when you spend time together, you don't feel that anymore, but yet you keep at the relationship. You keep trying because you want to get back, right, to where you were before, which may be impossible because now you are two different people than you were before. And so maybe the pleasure that relationship once brought you is no longer possible between the two of you. And so it's, when do I let go of that, right? When do I release this insistence that this relationship bring me the same pleasure that it once did? And when things don't, whether it be small things like a cup of coffee or a meal, big things like relationships or your work, we can get angry. We can get disappointed. We can even become rageful. And we can compromise our values and move out of alignment in an effort to achieve our happiness or our pleasure goal. And that's where Raga gets really sticky and we have to really watch out for it. Because let's go back to that relationship example. If you find that you are in a relationship with someone who is no longer in alignment with you, and you continue to try, and each time you get more disappointed, and you're getting actually kind of angry at this person because you feel they're not putting as much into the relationship, or you don't agree with something they've done or their beliefs. And you're getting frustrated because you want this relationship to work. You want to feel the pleasure that you felt before. But by continuously showing up and trying to force a round peg into a square hole, you are actually pulling yourself out of alignment, right? You are compromising your values, you're compromising what you believe and how you feel. And so we have to be very mindful that raga isn't pulling us to that degree, right? Again, it's okay to have preferences. It's normal to have preferences and to enjoy certain things and not enjoy other things. It's when we get attached that becomes the problem. When we need something to be a certain way in order for us to be okay, in order for us to be happy and to be at peace. So I like to use real life examples because I think it takes these concepts and it makes them much more applicable to your life. So let's go through some real life examples. So checking your phone. This is a great one because we all do this all the time, right? We check our phones, right? For the feeling of being wanted or included. So if you find yourself constantly looking at text messages or Instagram or whatever your social media of choice is, at your emails, and you're constantly seeking out, did someone email me, comment on a post of mine, reply to something, send me a text message, right? We get a little pleasure hit, and this is well documented that we get a little dopamine surge when that happens. And so dopamine is the happy chemical. It's literally designed for pleasure. And so if and so if we find ourselves really needing that, craving it. Craving is another concept that we will get into probably in a future satsang. But if we find ourselves really needing that and attaching our okayness, our happiness to the pleasure of that dopamine surge, then we are in raga. Okay. Um, Raga can even apply to things that you would consider to be good things, like your morning workout or your yoga practice. These are things that are pleasurable in life. They are healthy for us and they support us on this life journey. But if we wind up finding that if we don't get our morning walk or our yoga practice or our workout of whatever it is, or even our morning meditation or journaling practice or a cup of coffee, our whole day feels ruined, right? We just really set ourselves off on an unsteady path because we have become attached to this routine and the way that it makes us feel. Because working out, doing yoga, meditating, journaling, it makes us feel good. And if we start to believe that if we don't do those things, we can't feel good, we are in raga. Wanting your children to be in a good mood. This is another really, I think, common one that shows up in our lives. I am a mom. I think most moms probably feel the same way. It is very easy to be happy when your children are happy, and it is hard to be happy when your children are unhappy. And there's just this connection I think we have with our kids that is so deep and so strong that we feel what they feel. And so it is uncomfortable. It is not pleasurable when we have kids that are in a bad mood. This is why the teen years can be super challenging for many parents because there are a lot of teens who have a lot of emotional ups and downs, and we feel like we're riding that roller coaster with them. I have personally been going through this for the last several years. And I really was on that roller coaster, very, very strongly on that roller coaster. And I had to make a decision to step off the ride, to not attach my happiness to my daughter's happiness because it was outside of my control. Her happiness was outside of my control. And I was finding myself very unhappy a lot of the time because she was in a bad mood. And so clinging to that emotional state um, is something that takes our nervous system completely out of whack. And so we have to choose to disengage. We have to choose to allow our children's mood to be what it is. And we can prefer that they be in a good mood. I still prefer when my daughter is in a good mood, but I am okay if she's not. Uh, let's see. How about trying to recreate anything? The perfect vacation, the perfect holiday, the perfect family moment. Anytime we want to try to recreate something, we are, and we're attached to it becoming a certain way. So you can try to recreate it as long as you're not attached to how it comes out. And if, let's say, we went somewhere on vacation, the last time it was amazing, you had so much fun, the family got along, like everyone enjoyed themselves, it was wonderful. You decide to do it again. This time the weather is terrible. You can't do half the activities that you love to do. Everyone's fighting, right? It sounds miserable, right? And so the vacation is ruined. And that would be an example of raga, right? So we can try to recreate it. We can know that we have a preference for the vacation going a certain way, but is there space for that to not happen? Is there space for us to say, it's okay that it's pouring rain every day and that we don't get to do the things that we really want it to do? We can find other things to do. And it's not our happiness or the enjoyment or the pleasure of this vacation is not hinged on us being able to recreate the exact experience that we had before. Clinging to being productive is another one. I think, for a lot of people, a good day is a day when we check a lot of things off of our to-do list. I have been guilty of this so much throughout my life. And it feels good, right? You feel productive. You feel like you've taken a weight off. You've taken some pressure off of you because you know you have all these things that you need to do. And if you don't, if you're not able to do that, you wind up feeling guilty or uneasy or worthless. And you feel that you don't, your sense of value, right? Your sense of value is tied up in this idea of productivity. So clinging to being productive would be another way that raga shows up. Or can we prefer being productive, prefer being able to check a lot of things off of our to-do list, but be okay if we don't, right? Not have that not impact our mood or our sense of joy, happiness, okayness. Um, let's just do one more because I think this one's really applicable to us in this midlife stage, which is holding on to a version of ourselves, a previous version of ourselves. So that could be a previous version of our bodies, a previous version of our nervous systems, a previous version of our roles that we played. Like maybe you preferred when you had young children. You really enjoyed having young children, and now your children are teenagers or they're in college or beyond. And so mothering is very different, and you preferred the role of mothering when the kids were young. And so you try to hold on to that or cling to that. Or you try to cling to a previous version of your body by excessively working out or dieting or just, doing skin treatments or whatever the case may be. And again, none of those things are wrong, right? Do the exercise. If you feel better having some sort of procedure done on your skin, do it. If you want to be a certain weight, work towards that goal. The preferences are not the problem. The problem is attaching to them so strongly, clinging to them, that again, you're not okay with being the weight that you are, the age that you are, your body looking the way that it does, your nervous system functioning the way that it does, that this has somehow taken you off your center and you feel as though you can't be okay until you reach that goal weight or until you get that next round of Botox or until you can be juggle 10 things at once like you used to, right? And a lot of us feel that we can't do that anymore. So those are just some examples, and I could go on and on, but I wanted to really bring that down to the level of everyday experiences so that you can start to think about how this might be showing up in your own life. So, um, let's move on, I'd say, to I just want to I wanted to talk about the antidote first. Wanted to say I want to move on to our journaling practice, but before we do that, let's just talk about the opposite of raga, which is vairaga, which means non-attachment. And non-attachment is not meant to be cold or uncaring, right? Non-attachment doesn't mean you don't have a preference. It doesn't mean that you don't care deeply. It means that we can enjoy what is here. We can enjoy what is pleasurable to us without gripping it so tightly, right? We can just allow it to be. We can allow the experience to be and we can enjoy it and then allow it to pass. And when an experience comes by that we would label as not pleasurable, we can allow that too, right? So it's this non-attachment. We're not attaching to what's good. We're not attaching to what we would consider to be bad. We are just simply allowing life to flow. That's what we're doing, right? So when we try to put a stranglehold on things that we find pleasurable and we don't want to change or we want to reproduce, we're putting a stranglehold on life. The energy of life cannot flow that way. We need open palms and just allowing life to flow through us without attaching to any particular version. So just wanted to bring up that concept of non-attachment. So now if you have your journal or your notebook, I would take that out and we're going to just do a little personal reflection here. And the idea of this reflection is that you take some time to see just a few or one or a few areas in your life where raga may be showing up for you. So the first prompt that I'll offer to you is, where am I attaching my peace or happiness to a moving target, to something outside of me that I have no control over? It could be a person, an outcome, an identity, a role, a comfort. And where did this agenda come from? Right? Where did I decide, or why did I decide that in order to be happy or at peace or whole, that I needed this thing to be a certain way? And I just want to remind you that this is about self-reflection or svadhyaya, self-study. It's important to stay non-judgmental because when we judge ourselves, we actually cut ourselves off from the fruits of this work. The fruits of this work is to come to understand ourselves better, to see more clearly, to see ourselves and to see life more clearly. And when we judge, it really stops, it prevents us from seeing those things. So we aren't here to fix ourselves. We're simply here to know ourselves better. So try to keep that in mind as you answer these journal prompts. So I'm just going to give you a few moments with this first one, which is, what am I attaching my peace and happiness to that is a moving target? And where did this agenda come from? And now notice that, whatever situation, person, experience that came to mind, notice ways that you might try to control or manipulate moments to meet your agenda, right? How are you expending energy trying to make the moment meet your idea or your goal for pleasure or happiness? And what is it costing you emotionally, right? In other words, when I cling to this person, this outcome, this identity, desire, what emotion arises in me when it doesn't go as planned? And I know we don't have a lot of time here for reflection. I think I have to start making these satsangs more like an hour and a half. But I will place these journal prompts in the post that I create for this on Substack. So don't worry, you can go back and re-listen, or you can just go back and you'll be able to see the journal prompts beneath the video. Whatever emotions that maybe came to your awareness that you experience, ask yourself if those emotions are setting you free, liberating you, or keeping you locked in a cage. And then lastly, where does this attachment pull me out of alignment with my values? So, in other words, does this attachment ever lead me to abandon myself, ignore my truth, cross my boundaries, to people please, to avoid, to act from fear instead of love? And what would it look like to loosen my grip while still honoring what matters to you? Because again, Raga is not about giving up the things in life that bring you pleasure or pretending that they don't bring you pleasure. It's about loosening our grip or our clinging to those things. It's about recognizing that we were, are, and always will be whole and okay, regardless of what happens outside of us. Okay. I apologize that I didn't give you more time for that. But like I said, those prompts will absolutely be posted at the bottom of the post in Substack, and I should have that up in the next 24 hours so you can come back to it. We're going to move into our guided practice and I chose this particular guided practice because Raga really shows up in the body as much as it shows up in the mind and in our thoughts, words, and actions. And when you think about physically clinging to something, if you were to think about, or gripping something, you know what that feels like in your body. And when we emotionally cling or grip onto something, it shows up in the same way in our body. And so that's what we're going to explore today, because sometimes it's easier. Sometimes we'll be able to see, oh, I'm clinging to that. I'm gripping onto that, thinking that I need to be okay, that I need that to be okay. But sometimes it's easier to first recognize that our bodies are actually doing the clinging and the gripping. And then we can investigate, oh, why? Why is that happening? And then we can see how we are participating in raga. So sometimes it's top down and sometimes it's bottom up. So we're going to practice this bottom up practice. So once again, if you'd like to turn off your camera, if that will make you feel more relaxed, please do so. I want you to be able to really settle into the moment. You can find that comfortable seat again, lie down again, whatever lets your body feel very supported and very safe. And then let's just return to the breath again for another moment. Once again, just finding the breath and getting curious about it. Being the witness of our experience of the breath. And now bring to mind one attachment that you explored in your journaling. Choose something that feels safe enough to work with today. It doesn't need to be the deepest or most painful attachment, but one you're willing to gently observe. It could be a person, an outcome, an identity, a role, and silently name it. Now, with that attachment firmly in your mind's eye, notice what happens in your body. Where do you feel the grip? And there's nothing to fix here. There's nothing to force. Again, we're simply becoming aware. Is there a place in your body where you notice the tightening of muscles or the holding or bracing in the body? It could be the neck and shoulders, the chest or belly, the arms or legs, the face. Maybe it's furrowing of the brow. And see if you can gently release it wherever it is. Maybe you can't release it all the way, and that's okay. But can you release just a little bit? And we're going to play with this sensation of gripping and releasing so that we can really start to understand on a somatic level what that feels like in our bodies. So allowing that attachment, whatever you chose, to just wash away. You can release it from your mind's eye. You're just going to be present with the here and now and play with the sensation. So beginning with your face, gently tighten the muscles of your face. Scrunch your eyes, tighten your jaw. Just hold for a moment and release. Taking notice of maybe that sense of relief that comes, When you let the forehead soften, you let the eyes uncrinkle, and you let the jaw fall away. That's the difference between gripping and softening. Now bring your awareness to your hands, to your arms, and close your palms into fists. And then gently, we don't have to do this with full force to get the idea. Gently tighten, clench the palms, tense the forearms and the upper arms, really using our muscular strength to tighten everything up. And then let it all go. Release. Open the palms up to the sky. Let the fingers relax. The forearms relax. The biceps and triceps relax. Right? Really just getting to know the difference between clinging and holding and allowing. It's the practice of noticing the grip. Now bring your awareness to your shoulders, your chest, and your belly. And we're going to do the same thing there. So gently lift and tighten those shoulders, bringing them up towards your ears. Let the chest and belly contract enough to feel the bracing. And hold just for a moment. And then with an exhale, let it all go. Let the shoulders drop, the chest and belly soften. Notice what you feel when you let it all go. How does it feel? And notice what changes when the body no longer has to hold so tightly. Now bring your awareness to your legs and your feet. Tighten the thighs, the calves, and the feet. And hold it. Hold, feeling into the gripping sensation. And then let it all go. Let the legs soften, the feet be heavy. And let yourself be held. And now we'll do this for the whole body. Gently contract the face, the hands, the arms, the shoulders, the chest, the belly, the legs, the feet, and feel the full body experience of gripping. And with a long and slow exhale, release and soften everything. Feel yourself being held by the chair or the surface beneath you. Let your hands, the palms of your hands, rest up towards the sky. This is the shape of receiving without grasping. Feel how soft and heavy your body has become. And silently repeat, I can love this without gripping it. I can desire this without making my peace dependent on it. Now bring that attachment into your awareness once more and silently repeat, I can love this without gripping it. I can desire this without making my peace dependent on it. I can care deeply and still soften. I can loosen my grip one breath at a time. Take a few quiet breaths here. And notice if there is even a small space between you and the attachment. No rejection, no indifference, just space. And in that space, perhaps a little more freedom. When you feel ready, gently blinking the eyes open if you had them closed. Again, taking a moment to sit in stillness with the eyes open, reorienting yourself to the space around you, feeling into the energy of that practice. And then when you feel ready, maybe making those small and gentle movements with the body, rolling out the wrists, wiggling fingers and toes, maybe gently moving the head side to side and back and forth, just waking up the body. So I promised you a way of bringing this forward into your life for the next month to this is a way to maintain awareness around this concept and how it's showing up in your life. And I created a little acronym to help you remember, and it's called the SPACE practice. And I'd love to see you try to bring this into your everyday life over the next month. And if you do, I would love to hear how it worked for you. So please always feel free to message me on Substack or email me. Um, I always love to hear, how these things go for I always want to say patience. I was a nurse for 20 years, so the word patience always comes to my mind, but for practitioners and students. Okay, so the SPACE acronym. So S stands for see the clinging. So that's the absolute first step is that awareness, right? See the clinging, pause and notice. Where am I gripping? Where am I craving, controlling? Where am I believing that I need something to be a certain way in order to be okay, right? So seeing is the S. P is put a name to it, right? So there's so much power in simply just giving something a name. And it's so small and so simple, but cannot I cannot overstate how powerful it is to our nervous system and to our psyche to name something. So when you notice that you are attaching or you're clinging, or you could even use the word raga, just name it. This is attachment. This is clinging. This is raga, right? So the first thing we're noticing, we notice we're clinging and attaching to it. Then we put a name to it. This is attachment. Then we ask, in space, the A is for ask. Ask, what are you holding on to, right? What am I trying to hold on to right now? And what do I believe this will give me? Will it give me safety? Will it give me love? Will it give me peace, control, belonging, worth, right? What is it? Why do I feel that I need this thing to be okay, right? To be happy. C is connect to the body, like we just did. So notice where the attachment is showing up in your body. Could be in the chest, the belly, the jaw, the hands, the breath. Maybe your breath is getting very short. And can you release? Can you soften the grip just a little bit? And the E is for embody steadiness. So, what action would I take if my peace were not dependent on this outcome, if my happiness were not dependent on this outcome? Right? What would I actually do? So, the practice is to notice when we've handed our peace and our happiness and our joy over to something that's always changing, and to then gently begin to take it back. Right? To notice when we're in raga, when we are seeking pleasure at the expense of our peace, at the expense of our values, of our energy, of being in alignment. That's when it's time to release the grip, to step back, and to understand our wholeness, our okayness, despite our preferred experience or our non-preferred experience. All right, I will also put that at the bottom as well. So if you were here, you don't have to come back to the whole thing. I know you probably weren't able to write all that down, but it's a very simple practice, and it's fast, right? You can see the clinging, put a name to it, gently ask yourself what you're holding on to, connect into the body, and then choose to move from steadiness all within 1 minute, right? The whole practice could take 1 minute. So once again, I hope if you choose to use the practice, I really hope you get in touch with me because I'd love to hear how it went for you. All right, my friends, I know we went over time. I so appreciate you hanging in there with me. Also, let me know if you'd like this to be an hour and a half in the future or if I just need to talk less, which is a problem for me historically. So, but I can work on that. If you want to keep it at an hour, if you'd like it to go to an hour and a half, like just let me know either way. And before we go, I just want to come back together for one moment, go inward and acknowledge what we shared in this space. So just taking a moment to place hand on heart, one hand on belly, closing the eyes one last time, and maybe anchoring in to one word, phrase, or feeling that you want to carry forward. What is that for you? And then taking hands together in Anjali Mudra, prayer mudra. And we place our hands in front of our chest, right in front of our heart space. And then bring our hands up to our third eye. This represents that we are uniting what is in our heart with what is in our mind. And we bow and say, Namaste. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for your willingness to investigate, to get curious, to svadhyaya, to study yourself, um, and to see truth. Have a great rest of your week. Bye bye.